The color you're using doesn't actually belong to you. Picture this. A senior designer in Taipei sits down at his computer one morning. He's about to open a brand new project he's been working on for 3 years. Dozens of files, a whole visual identity system built up for a client. Piece by piece, he double-clicks the Photoshop file, and then a dialog box appears on his screen. This file has Pantone colors that have been removed and replaced with black due to changes in Pantone's licensing with Adobe. In plain English, all those colors you carefully chose and calibrated, they're gone. Every single one of them is now black. 3 years of work, dozens of project files. Overnight, everything lost its color. Not a computer crash, not a bug. Just two companies, Adobe and Pantone, sitting in a conference room somewhere, failing to agree on a licensing deal. Their fight, your problem. That's the story I want to tell you today. It's a story about how a standard becomes a monopoly, about how one company managed to put a price tag on the rainbow, and how the whole world just paid it without even realizing. The company is called Pantone. It's based in New Jersey. It has no factory. It doesn't make ink or fabric or paint. But it is the invisible ruler of global printing, design, fashion, and manufacturing. A company you've been in contact with almost every single day, and probably never thought about once. Let's go back to the 1950s. The printing industry was booming. It was also a complete mess. Back then, if a brand wanted to print their logo on a box, they'd call up a print shop and say something like, "I want that red, deep red, a little bit of orange in it." You know, the printer would nod, then go mix a dozen different base inks together, based on memory and gut feeling, trying to produce whatever he thought the client meant. The result would come back. "No, that's too orange." Reprint. "Still not right. That's darker than what I wanted." Reprint again. This wasn't a one-off. This was happening across the entire printing industry, the cosmetics industry, the textile industry, every single day. Because color, the most intuitive, emotional thing in the world, had no shared language. You say sky blue. I picture a bright noon sky. You say navy. I picture near black ocean water at midnight. Everyone had a different color dictionary in their head. And the miscommunication was costing the global industry what would be hundreds of millions of dollars today. In 1956, a young man fresh out of Hofstra University with a chemistry degree started working at a small printing company in New Jersey. His name was Lawrence Herbert. The company was called M&J Levine Advertising. The owners were two brothers who made color cards for the cosmetics and fashion industries. Their process, if you could call it that, was pure gut instinct. The shop kept around 60 base pigments. When a client called, a worker would mix them by hand. No formula, no written record, just experience and feel. Herbert spent his day studying those pigments. His chemistry background helped him see the real problem faced. It wasn't that the workers were bad at their jobs. It was that the system itself made consistent results impossible. No precise formulas, no documentation. Change the worker, change the batch of ink, change the humidity in the room, and the color shifts. So he started organizing everything. He systematized the existing pigments, built exact mixing ratios for each color, and wrote it all down. What he was doing sounds simple, just organizing. But that act of organizing was about to change how the entire world sees color. By 1962, Herbert had been at the company for 6 years. The ink and printing division he'd been running was profitable and well organized. But the other half of the business, commercial advertising displays, had racked up $50,000 in debt. The Levine brothers wanted out. Herbert made a move that surprised everyone. He offered to buy the company's technical assets, the ink formulas he had built, for exact $50,000, just enough to cover the brothers' debt. The brothers ran the numbers, sell the assets, clear the debt, get rid of a headache. Deal. Herbert named his new company Pantone. It's a made-up word, pan from Greek, meaning all, plus tone. All tones. A man not yet 30 years old had just spent $50,000, roughly $500,000 in today's money, to buy the seat of an empire that would control the global language of color for half a century. In 1963, the Pantone matching system, PMS, launched, and its format was almost laughably simple. It was a booklet. Inside, long strips of paper fanned out like a deck of cards. Each strip showed a series of related colors. Every single color had a unique number, and behind every number was a precise mixing formula. Which base inks, in what exact proportions? What did that mean in practice? It meant a designer in New York could tell the print shop in Guangzhou, use Pantone 485C. The printer in China would open the formula, mix the color exactly as specified, and the result would match the designer's swatch perfectly. No guesswork, no arguments, no reprints. Herbert didn't invent new colors. He invented a language for color. That was his real genius. Humans had been living with color for thousands of years, but no one had ever given it a common language that everyone could read. He fills that gap. The big ink manufacturers ignored him at first. Who was this tiny startup trying to push a new standard? Herbert changed tactics. Instead of going to the top, he went to the bottom. Small ink suppliers, independent color mixers, the little guys the big companies ignored. He licensed the system to them one by one. Within 2 weeks of launch, he had sold 20 licenses. By 1968, PMS was the industry standard for printing. By the 1970s, Pantone color books had sold over 100,000 copies worldwide, and the system had expanded from printing into plastics, textiles, fashion, and industrial design. Its power came from universality. No matter what country you were in, what machine you used, what language you spoke, the same Pantone number got you the same color. In a globalizing world, that certainty was priceless. Once Pantone became the global standard, a very interesting business logic kicked in. Designers, print shops, and manufacturers all needed the color books to communicate with global supply chains. This wasn't a luxury. It was a tool, like a chef's knife or a carpenter's saw. But this particular tool had an unusual quirk. Pantone strongly recommended replacing your color books every 12 to 18 months. The reason? Paper fades, light, humidity, and oxidation gradually shift colors on the swatches. A swatch from 3 years ago might be off enough to cause misprinted products to get rejected. Physically speaking, that's completely true. But that true fact had a remarkable commercial consequence. Pantone had effectively created an annual color tax on every designer in the world. Don't pay? Your tools become outdated. Pay. Come back next year and pay again. As Pantone's system reached every corner of the business world, another game emerged: brand color ownership. You know that iconic Robin's Egg Blue from Tiffany & Co. In the Pantone system, it has a number, Pantone 1837. Why 1837? Because that's the year Tiffany was founded. In 1998, Tiffany formally registered their color with Pantone as an exclusive shade, trademarked, not publicly licensed, off limits to other brands. What does that mean? It means if you're a jewelry designer and you want to use a blue that's very close to Tiffany Blue on your packaging, legally, you might be infringing. Can a company own a color? Through the Pantone system, Tiffany made it possible. It's not just Tiffany, UPS Brown, T-Mobile Magenta, even the national flag blue of some countries, all mapped to specific Pantone numbers, all protected to varying degrees. Pantone wasn't just selling color swatches anymore. It was selling something far more powerful, the right to define what the correct color is. By the 1980s, design had gone digital. Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign. Designers moved from paper to screen. Pantone moved with them, embedding its color libraries into all the major design software. For decades, this was just how things worked. Pantone colors were built into Adobe software, the same way a keyboard comes with letters. It was just there, until the day it wasn't. Late October 2022, Australia, a designer named Ian Anderson opened a freshly updated version of Photoshop to work on a file that used Pantone colors. The dialog box appeared. This file has Pantone colors that have been removed and replaced with black. He took a screenshot and posted it on Twitter. That tweet was retweeted 18,000 times in 24 hours. The design world exploded. What happened? The story goes back to December 2021, when Adobe quietly announced it would be removing the built-in Pantone color library from future updates. The two companies told different stories. Pantone said Adobe was using outdated color data that was hurting color accuracy and damaging Pantone's reputation. Adobe said Pantone had changed its licensing terms. And those new terms, Pantone no longer wanted to let Adobe bundle its library for free or cheap. Instead, it wanted designers to pay separately. A subscription to Pantone Connect at $14.99 a month. Two companies with a combined market cap in the hundreds of billions of dollars couldn't agree on a licensing fee. And millions of designers worldwide got the bill. The cruelest part wasn't even the new subscription. It was what happened to old files, not just new work going forward. Any old file you had, from any year, that used Pantone color codes, open it in the updated Photoshop, and those colors would be replaced with black. Not a warning to subscribe, not a prompt, just gone. Years of work turned to black. The design community called it color hostage taking. British artist Stuart Semple put it bluntly. They've turned old work black, removed all the Pantone information. This is holding our art hostage. It's a horrible thing to do. A University of Michigan law professor clarified an important point when speaking to NPR. Pantone has no copyright over color itself. Under US law, you can't copyright a color. So, what was Pantone actually selling? It was selling the system, the numbering system, the mixing formula database, the dictionary. It doesn't own red, but it owns the word Pantone 485C, the formula, and the book. Take away the dictionary, and your red can no longer be precisely translated. While the designers were furious online, one person decided to actually do something about it. Stuart Semple is a British artist and the founder of an art materials brand called Culture Hustle. He has a habit. Whenever he believes a private company has unfairly grabbed a color, he makes a free alternative version and opens it to all artists. A few years earlier, he had already done something legendary. A company had developed a material called Venta Black. It absorbed over 99% of visible light, making it the darkest black ever made. Then that company gave the exclusive artistic license for Venta Black to a single sculptor, Anish Kapoor. One man owned the rights to use the darkest color in existence for art. Semple was furious. He spent 2 years working with over 1,000 testers to develop an ultra-deep black pigment called Black 3.0, free for all artists to use. With one exception, Anish Kapoor was not allowed to buy it. And it was actually written on the purchase page. Please confirm you are not Anish Kapoor. When the Pantone story broke in October 2022, within days Semple announced his counterattack. He built a free Adobe plugin called Freetone, containing 1,280 colors. Their values almost identical to the Pantone library, but with names starting with Sempletone instead of Pantone. On his website, he wrote, 1,280 liberated colors, extremely Pantone adjacent, considered indistinguishable from those locked behind Adobe's paywall. He wasn't infringing. Pantone can copyright a color's equal values, only its numbering system and trademark. Semple used the same color values, gave them new names, and walked a very careful line through the legal gray zone. Within days, Freetone had been downloaded 30,000 times. Designers shared it everywhere. Go download Freetone. This is our fight back. Semple later said, seeing so many people say it saved their design business. That feeling was genuinely beautiful. Lawrence Herbert, in 1963, was a true problem solver. When the whole world was struggling to communicate about color, he showed up with a little booklet and fixed a problem that had frustrated an entire industry for decades. He gave color a language. He let designers and factories talk precisely to each other for the first time. It was a genuine contribution, one that changed how global supply chains work. He was the hero who slew the dragon. But when the hero kills the dragon and takes over the land, sometimes he starts growing skills of his own. Color books that need replacing every year. That's a tax. A separate subscription to use digital colors. That's a heavier tax. Old files turning black when you don't pay. That's punishment for not paying the tax. The story of Pantone is a very modern version of one of the oldest stories in business. When a private company monopolizes a foundational standard for communication, it gains life and death power over everyone who depends on that standard. It doesn't need to take your computer. It doesn't need to shut down your factory. It just needs to take away the dictionary. And your world loses its color. So let's go back to the question from the beginning. Who has the power of life and death over color? In law, no one. You can't copyright a color. In reality, the answer is, whoever controls the language of color controls color itself. Pantone doesn't own red, but it owns the right to define, transmit, and chart for Pantone 485C, that red. This story is a reminder that in a modern business world, the strongest mode isn't a patent or a factory or capital. It's a standard. When your system becomes the world's shared language, you gain the right to chart everyone who speaks it.